Recording? Yes. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our Parashah Shavua Bible study, looking at some parts of the Torah that we didn't quite cover last year, and then the Haftarah, or Haftara, actually, as the actual word is. It's a different word. Okay? It sounds like Torah, but it's actually spelt completely differently. In Hebrew, it's spelt differently and comes from a different verb. The word Torah comes from lochorot, which means to teach, or to guide, or to instruct, and haftara comes from lahaftir, which is the verb to exempt. And why the prophets are exemptions, I have no idea. I don't think anyone really knows why this word is the way it is. But it's the way it is. So let's begin with a word of prayer, and we acknowledge that despite all of the darkness that is around, and there is much of it, God is still King. He is still life. He's still sitting on the throne. He deserves to be worshipped, and His word still needs to be studied and put into practice. The one of the ways you actually fight the darkness is by doing the will of God. And how do you do the will of God? If not to learn and study it. So let's pray. Father in heaven, our Father, our King, you sit on the throne, and you've given us so much, and we are so thankful and grateful. There is much that we could, Lord, begin to pray and intercede and ask, but we are reminded that we should always come into your throne room, into your presence, which we hope is in our hearts and in our community, with thanksgiving and praise. And so in this study, Lord, we thank you for your word, the word that reveals what you've done in history, the word that reveals how you're working in the world today, and your word that reveals what you're going to do in the future. Lord, it is a treasure. It's such a treasure. And we do thank you for your word. And we ask, Lord, for your spirit to be amongst us as we study your word, giving us knowledge and wisdom and the courage, Lord, to do your will here on earth. We ask this most humbly in the name of our risen Messiah, B'Shem Yeshua. Amen. All right. So two very interesting portions. Some of them have almost what we would say direct relevance to what's going on today. Oddly enough, how that a bit of irony. The first portion is Noah, and it's one of the actual portions of the Bible that's named after a Gentile. And there's only a few of those. This is one. The other one is Yitro, and the other one is Balaam. You've got, and Yitro is a Gentile, and where you get the Ten Commandments, and Balaam's a prophet, which is very interesting because God speaks to other peoples, and obviously He does because He's been talking to Noah, and Noah seems to talk back. The word Noach means to rest, and which is strange because his portion doesn't have a lot of resting in it. It's actually quite a violent portion, and oddly enough, the word for violent people is Hamas. It's the first time that word is used, not the only time, but that word arrives. The portion begins by saying that the Lord, the earth was full of corruption in God's sight, and it was full of violence, full of Hamas. God saw how the earth had become corrupt, which poses a question. When did that happen? When did God actually finally notice, oh my God, things are going bad. Maybe I should go down and stop it. Was God not paying attention for a certain amount of time? What happens is it brings up these questions of, Lord, you do see everything. When do you see everything? Right? What was God doing on October the 7th on Shabbat? He who watches over Israel neither slumbers or sleeps. So, okay, so how'd that happen? So it does create faith shocks. it does create questions amongst communities, and Judaism has had to wrestle with this because they've had these texts for thousands of years. When did God notice that the world had gotten evil? Is there an amount, and that is often the conclusion, that there becomes a limit to evil that God can actually abide? We notice in some of the Psalms, King David says, don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Well, what had David done? Oh, pretty much broken every single commandment. Committed murder, committed adultery, done all kinds of things, lied. And yet he still has the chutzpah to turn around and say, hey, don't take your Holy Spirit from me. And so there is a certain, how do I describe this? Jesus doesn't run away from the human condition. Yeshua engages in suffering. He sits in amongst a fallen world. So God can abide a certain amount of sin. He tries to fix it. But there is a limit. And what is that limit? Well, we don't know. And because we don't know what the limit is, best not to test it, right? What's the phrase for Rabbi Akiva? When should we repent, Rabbi? Or one day before you die. Or when are you going to die? So it better be about the idea of repenting. How much sin can we do before God actually leaves our community, and our sin actually drives the presence of God out? When does the Holy Spirit actually leave us? Don't know. Don't try. So you've got this. It starts off. The world has reached its ceiling limit, and God is going to send the flood, or in Hebrew they call it the Mabul. And this actually begins to set up the concept of water as a purification device. Right? Why is it that we have a mikveh? Okay, yes, there are passages in the Torah that describe this is how you get yourself clean, by using water. Well, why is water this element that cleanses, especially when fire does just as good a job, and sometimes even better? And so things are purified by fire. We talk about that phrase, but it's actually the flood begins to bring in this idea that water actually can cleanse once certain sins have been released. And it's also the whole nation as it goes through the waters of the Red Sea, which then acts like a mikveh. Right? So water gets involved in parts of the history of the world, both with the people of Israel and with the world in general. So God has a look at this world, and things have gone sort of horribly wrong, and God decides that we're going to flood the world. God says, I regret that I had made man, which is a horrible sentence to say. But then the next question is, how can God regret? Like, did you not know this was going to happen? And this, again, sets up the ambiguity. We've talked about the ambiguity that starts in Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. How does God, who's outside of time, actually able to enter and come into time and actually do stuff? And any time that God enters time, he is then bound by the very same rules he has created. So if he's inside, for example, like if God is going to stand in front of Moses, where is God not standing? Well, he's not standing in front of me, because he's standing in front of Moses, right? If God is going to put Moses in the cleft of a rock and Moses is going to see his back, then God is in actually our location. It becomes ambiguous. How do I describe something where Solomon says, the heavens cannot sustain you. You're too big to fill the universe. So how does it work? And then yet God can limit himself by being inside a temple. It creates the ambiguity. The tension is there. How does God do this? And so God has this emotion which he should not have, but he does have. Regret. If you know the end from the beginning, how can you have a regret? Well, he does. It's ambiguous. It's setting up this incredible way where God actually, when he's dealing with his creation, he's dealing with it in such an incredible way. And God sends a rainbow, as you know, and the rainbow is for the Lord. The actual text is that rainbow is a sign for me, and when I see it, I will remember my covenant. And it's not that humans look at rainbows. Humans look at rainbows all the time, and then they never think about God, you know. And especially with the way we use the rainbow these days. It's the rainbow, the keshet, the bow, is for the Lord. And when we think about remembering, we know that memory is not the same as we understand it for humans. It's not that God forgets. So in Genesis 8, God remembers. God remembers Noah. That's what happens in this Torah portion. It's not that God forgot Noah. It's not that God did everything in Genesis 6 and Genesis 7 and puts him in the ark and then goes back to heaven, starts playing his Xbox, and the archangel Michael comes over and says, "Excuse me, Lord, but there's a guy floating in a boat out here and he thinks he knows you." And God's like, "Oh my gosh, how long have you been down there, Noah? Completely forgot about you. Sorry, I got distracted. 150 days. My gosh, it must stink in there with all those animals. Let's get the action going here." So go on, let's pull the plug, drown. All the water's going to come away, and away we go. Let's start again. It's when you have memory in the Bible, and it highlights here, when you remember something, you actually do it. And so God looks at a rainbow and he remembers his covenant and he acts on it every single time it rains, which is a beautiful thought. The incident, so as we know from Noah, he happens to be the worst evangelist on the planet. Okay, so he gets all this time to build the ark, and he only manages to save his own family. Not anybody else is brought in. If we're ever doing an outreach campaign, he is not one of the guys to bring to the party. Okay, he has no way to be able to express what God has told him. He is described as a man of the earth because he goes and he plants a vineyard. And there's a couple of interesting midrashim on Noah and his little vineyard. One of them is that there's Noah gets off the boat and he starts working the earth, and Satan comes along and says, "What you doing?" And Noah says, "I'm planting a vineyard." And Satan's like, "Oh, would you like me to help you?" And Noah says, "Sure, why not?" Noah's like some help. Got to remember, the angel Satan, he's beautiful, right? He's not horns and a goat and all that kind of stuff. He's nice. He's pleasant. He's probably got a beautiful voice. Probably sings really, really well. Okay, and plays the piano and all that stuff. And so he says to Noah, "I'll help." And then while Noah's sleeping, he takes a lamb and he kills the lamb and uses the blood to put it in the earth of the vineyard. And then he takes a lion, kills the lion, he puts the blood in the vineyard, and then he takes a monkey and a pig, and mixes the earth with the blood of these animals. And the rabbis then say, so notice that when you first start to have a glass of wine, you have a little sip, you're like a lamb. You become calm and you relax, and like a sheep is before its shepherd, you do nothing. But then after you finish your first glass, you're like a lion. the alcohol has got you and you can take on the world, and then, but you keep drinking because you're a little silly like Noah. And then you start to behave like a monkey. You throw things all over the place and you start, destroying stuff. And eventually you keep drinking, and all you ever end up is you just become a pig. You're just a mess. And I thought it was a cute little midrash for them. Noah does get off the ark. Things immediately go south. It's as though we in the human condition, we bring the fall with us. Okay, the fall went into the ark. The fall came out of the ark, and you end up with something very inappropriate happening between Ham and Noah, and yet Genesis says that even though Ham saw his father's nakedness, it was cursed be Canaan, and Canaan is actually cursed, not Ham. Okay, so Noah gets up and he says, "Cursed be Canaan," and in Jewish tradition, beginnings and endings are always linked. There is a pattern in the Bible. If Canaan is cursed straight off after in the New World, where does God send his people to shine the light? To the land of Canaan, right? And so God's going to fix the curse of Canaan by sending his people to the land of Canaan, where they are going to be the light, and God is going to live in his temple. You end up with the dispersion of the people around on the world, but only because of God. God had told them to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth, which they then turned around and haven't done. They decided to congregate in one area and build a tower. Now, why would they build a tower? One wonders. They described it amongst themselves. This is a name for myself or for ourselves. But in rebellion, they already have a history, a sacred history. They know that when we rebelled, God flooded the place. So if we're going to rebel, we'd better build up, because we might get a flood again. So that this massive tower is constructed, and God, again, very cryptically says, "Let's go down so I can see what man is doing," as though I don't know, right? When God enters into his creation, he's bound by those rules, and he disperses the nations with different languages. What's interesting then is people then just have a discussion. What is the first language? What is the language of heaven? What is everybody speaking? And of course, if you're a good Jewish sage, yes, say Hebrew. Of course you do. But that also means the enemy speaks Hebrew. Right? Sometimes we think, Hebrew is a holy tongue. Well, if it's that holy, how come the enemy angels speak it? And so we have to understand that it might be the language of heaven. It could be. It very well be. It might not be. It might be something else. We will know when we know. So the 70 nations that are listed in the table of nations of Genesis 11 come to us and give us this concept that the world can be at least shrunk down to 70 people groups. And this tradition then shows up that when God speaks, fire comes out of his mouth, because his word is a fire, a living flame, and it actually always splits into 70, so that there's each nation can hear God in their own tongue. Now, the Torah portion that's attached to Noah is from Isaiah. In fact, both Haftarah portions are from the prophets. Next time we meet, they will go into sacred history. We'll go into the kings, but the Torah portion, the Haftarah portion, is from Isaiah 54 and 55, and it probably gets its link because in verse 9 it describes, for this is like the waters of Noah to me. This is God speaking. For as I have sworn that the waters of Noah would no longer cover the earth, so I have sworn that I will no longer be angry with you. So the prophet begins by describing the Israel and Jerusalem as a forsaken people. They're barren. They're alone. They've been unfaithful. You actually in the prophets you get this very strong emphasis that the relationship that God has with His people is a very intimate relationship. That's the same as between a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, and that God is the husband, Israel's the bride, and Israel has been unfaithful. And not only has she been unfaithful, she's not producing any fruit. She is barren. She's not doing her job. And so here you have this discussion. The prophet uses the images of barrenness and the concept of a husband and an unfaithful wife, and God has been angry. God has actually been he's actually punished his lady. His lady is full of shame, and in verse 5, for your maker, your creator, the person who makes you, is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name. Okay, is the interesting thing to describe him. When God is talking to this unfaithful lady, he uses a very powerful part of him. I am the Lord of armies. I'm not just one guy here. You can't ignore me. I command myriads of angels. Even that alone, that power should have you on your knees. But instead, you've run away. But he also then uses instead of using this big powerful name, he then turns around and says, I'm your Goel, I'm your Redeemer. I'm the one who's actually going to also come back and buy you back, even though you're trash, right? I should just ignore you, but I can't actually. There's something about the relationship that God has with his people that he himself can't ignore. There's an attraction. Sometimes I think as humans we actually can touch and understand what that love is, where we love each other, and sometimes we can't explain why we do. But we know it's so powerful and it makes us do all kinds of things. Well, God is so full of love for his people that it's bound him to his people. He is the Holy One of Israel, okay, which is verse 5, but he is also called the God of the whole earth. And it's interesting. The God of Israel is also the God of the whole earth. And you're beginning to see, it's already in the Psalms, but the prophets are also saying it, is that, and Isaiah is one of the prophets because he's so a bigger book, it's got 66 chapters. He has lots of opportunities to describe how God loves Gentiles, how God loves every aspect of the world. In fact, your job, Israel, was to speak to them. I was using you as my mouthpiece. They were going to look at you, and when they looked at you, they were going to see me. It was the way that we were going to talk to them. In verse 7, God says, "For a mere moment, I forsook you." Right? Time is very different to God. Right now, we already know as believers in Jesus, that when Jesus says, "Behold, I am coming quickly," quickly doesn't mean quickly the way I think quickly. Okay, 2,000 years later, he's still coming quickly, right? So God says, "For a brief moment, I forsook you." Well, Israel's had hundreds of years in diaspora, right? What does it mean what's the limit? Like in Genesis, in Noah, where where it took time for the world to reach its zenith of sin, and but God's here when he's dealing with his people, because the Haftorah is looking at the Torah portion and seeing God's dealing with the world, then they turn around and they sort of apply some of what they learn there to the way God is dealing with his people. Is that for a moment you reached a zenith. There was a time where Israel, you did reach that point, and you got exiled. But the relationship that I have with you is such that that you're not forsaken. Barren, yes. Not doing your job, yes. But you're not forsaken. And so with great mercies, I'm going to call you back. And that the word mercy in Hebrew is rechamim. It's always in plural. So mercy has multiple levels of mercy. It's not one thing. There's so many aspects to mercy. There's the mercy of a relationship that's restored. There's the mercy of sins that are covered. There's a mercy of a calling which is re-given back to Israel. So I'm not taking away your calling. You still have it. I am canceling your sin because I love you so much. I am actually going to go have a relationship with you, even though you have abandoned me before. I'm going to be the one that comes and gets you. So there's multiple levels to this one word mercy, but it's always in plural. And the other one is that it describes that God has chesed olam. Okay, chesed we often sometimes describe. Some people translate that as grace. It's loving kindness. God's loving kindness is olam, forever. God's loving kindness goes on until the end, which is quite beautiful. So the passage where the Haftorah meets the Torah portion is in where it uses the word Noah, like the waters of Noah. I flooded the world. It got to this, the corruption got to a point where I couldn't abide it anymore, and I used water to cleanse it. Okay, now that that's done, I swore I'd never do that again. And so God also says, so I have sworn that I will not be angry with you. So I was angry with you, Israel. Okay, I know what you were doing. You were worshiping idols. You were sacrificing children. Okay, that's why it's sins of Israel. If you come to Israel, it can always take you to a valley called the Gehinnom, and that valley is the valley where they would sacrifice children. And where God says, this never entered my mind that you would do such a thing. I mean, who ever told you to do this? And so God was angry with his people. But just like the waters of the flood, where he said, I'm not going to do that again, he promises that his nation, I'm not going to be angry with you forever. And my kindness, my chesed, my grace and my mercy will not actually depart from you. And in verse 10, he describes something very interesting. My covenant of peace will not be removed. Brit Shalom. Now, this is the first time this not the first time this word is used. It's used in the Torah. Okay, a Brit Shalom, a covenant of peace. And the covenant of peace that's used there, okay, is actually with Pinchas. It's where Pinchas, who's actually a descendant of Aaron, stabs a prince from Simeon who's copulating with a princess of Moab, and he rams his spear and skewers both of them. It's all kind of a very interesting story. Probably looks good on movies, but doesn't always read so well when you're doing Sunday school. But then God turns around and says, because of this guy, I'm going to have a covenant of peace with his family forever. And you go, wow, oh my gosh, it's where the peace, which is not just an absence of war, but it's packed with meaning of wholeness, of everything being paid, of what a covenant that's 100% involvement on both sides. God is going to have a covenant with Israel like that forever. And the prophet is essentially describing the relationship that God has with his people as actually being complete, whole, and even though it involved violence, okay, there was the violent attitude of the flood, there was the violence of exile, the violence of Pinchas. It ends with a relationship that is incredibly close between God and his people, between husband and wife, etc., that actually lasts forever. So there's light, as they say, at the end of the tunnel. And so the prophetic portion gets the first 5 verses of Isaiah 55, although there's no chapters in the ancient text, where as part of this relationship that's restored, which is restored by God, right? The one who has chosen to not be angry anymore, the one who has chosen to be the Redeemer, the one who has chosen to be a faithful husband. He turns around and he says, okay, then come back and come and buy things that don't cost any money. Right? If you're hungry, come and get bread. If you're thirsty, come and get a drink. If you'd like a little glass of wine, come and get that. You want milk, it's all ready, and it doesn't cost you anything. So the things that God is offering are well, first of all, they're incredible. And so what is he talking about? How can these things cost no money? Because everything costs money. There's no such thing as a free lunch, so to speak. Well, then obviously you read deeper into the text and you realize what is it that I'm really supposed to be receiving from God? And it's his voice. Like, listen carefully to me. It's his word that you're eating. You eat his words. So yes, that includes the Bible, but it also is just the voice of the living God. It's that if you're in a relationship with someone, you're hearing from him. And so incline your ear and your soul will live, right? And I'll make an everlasting covenant with you. Well, he's already made an everlasting covenant. Okay, what's interesting there in that verse, I'll make an everlasting covenant with you, is it's singular plural. Okay, so it's talking about a group of people, but it's using it in a singular fashion. So every individual person is getting the covenant. So which is actually quite nice. So I think that the Haftarah portion really does. It takes the story of Noah, which is a story of rejection, of evil, and violence, and then it has this cleansing moment, and then with God coming and wanting to make sure that he's still going to make a covenant with his people, which he himself is always going to remember, the rainbow. Then it has a look at the status of Israel, and it sees an unfaithful people who have not done their share of the covenant. They're going to go into exile, but God is going to say, I'm not going to be angry with you forever. I'm also going to remember my covenant. Not only that, I'm going to make sure that I've remembered it with you, and you and I are going to have a special relationship. It's going to be a covenant of peace. It's going to be an everlasting covenant. It's going to be very deeply personal. But you're also still going to get back into doing your job. So come to the Lord, listen to his voice, gather around his word, become part of this covenant as individuals and as a nation. And God will do this. Why? Because he's full of mercy, which is in plural. It's full of mercy in so many ways. The next portion, Torah portion, is Genesis, is Lech Lecha, And straight away, just that those words in itself, God calls a family now, the calling of Abram. Lech Lecha, which we often translate as go out, literally means go to you. Okay, Lech, walk, Lecha, walk to you. So it's not go out, it's in your going out, you'll actually discover who you really are. Okay, is that as well as God calling a family group who are going to present and become a blessing to the nations, right? This is where you get that verse that, you know, if whoever blesses you, I'll bless. Whoever curses you, I'll curse. Although there's going to be lots of people who, because of our current situation, will say that that's not happening anymore. An article came out in Premier Christian News where some wonderful brothers and sisters from Palestinian territories wrote an article calling on Christians to repent of their support of Israel. Okay. Can you believe that? Okay. Well, of course you can believe that. And they're saying that, you know, obviously Christians who have a blind support of Israel are very wrong, and they've caused lots of suffering. So I'm actually going to give a radio interview in the United Kingdom, because that's where this article came out, and in the next couple of days, as rebuttal. So I have to be very careful that we don't, because you don't want to demonize your brothers and sisters. You don't want to sit there and finger point and say my theology is better than your theology. Ha ha! You're not reading the Bible properly, because everyone's reading the same Bible and coming to different conclusions. But I am going to say that you're absolutely right. It's a call to repentance, has always been. That God has always called his people to repent. Everyone should repent, but you should repent of sin. Okay, supporting Israel is not a sin. You might not agree with it, you might not like it, you might have a different understanding of God's calling, but it itself is not a sin. And that's what some Christians are challenging others, including us. They're saying that our support of Israel, CMJ, Church's Ministry Among Jewish People, is evil. But it is not. Okay, it is part of the calling. Lech Lecha, go to you. And I think that's actually quite deeply personal, that when you embrace the calling that God has on that we have on our lives, and particularly the calling that CMJ has, you actually discover something about yourself. And Abram is going to discover lots about himself and his family, and as he shares the monotheism to a world, although other people are monotheists. Israel's not unique in the idea of a one God. Okay, it's just very, very well crafted form. You know that there are monotheistic cults in Rome, in Greece, in Egypt, but they were small, and they certainly weren't embraced by a nation. Okay, God decides he's going to he's going to call Abram. Where does he call him? He calls him not in his original land. I mean, he does, Ur of the Chaldees, but he's asking him to go somewhere which is going to become his land. So he's called him in a place where it's not his land, it's not his God there. He's having to come out of it, and so basically everybody's calling should be something roughly the same. We're called out of something to discover something about ourselves, the truth that we're loved, that we're unique, that we're made in the image of the divine, that the evil and darkness does not have to win, etc., etc. In the story of Abram, he ends up engaging in international politics. I mean, this guy has an incredible career. He's not just like Noah. Noah gets only a few chapters where Noah build a boat. Yeah, it sounds good. He doesn't do anything other than build a boat, you might notice, and then plant vineyards. Essentially, that's what you see the character doing. Noah doesn't go off to war with kings. He doesn't, intercede from the Lord. Abraham's going to be the guy that intercedes for Sodom and Gomorrah, okay, and challenge the Lord that way. Noah's going to obey, absolutely, but in his obedience, he doesn't save that many people. Abraham's going to obey, and he's going to have a very interesting relationship with God, and he's going to save everybody. He's going to be able to bring the light to Gentiles. And so in the Torah portion of Lech Lecha, as Abraham is discovering who he is, as well as bringing the light, he engages in violence. Okay, he engages in war. Something interesting that you have in the Hebrew Bible, which is not always easy to swallow, is the heroes of God, the people who actually lead the people, they're all warriors. Okay? They're all killers. That doesn't sit well in 2,000 years after the Messiah. I know, okay? Because of what we're doing is we're taking a present day morality and we're superimposing it on the past. It's very difficult to do that. But you probably shouldn't be doing that. He engages in international politics with Pharaoh, where he craftily uses the truth in a way that is horribly misleading. Okay, so he says that Sarah is his sister, which is actually technically true. He just neglected to say that he was also his wife. Okay, and so sets up all kinds of issues. And there's a midrash about our little Pharaoh and Sarah, where Pharaoh notice Pharaoh doesn't get a name. Pharaoh never gets a name in the Bible. Have you noticed that? He's just called Pharaoh. Can't possibly be the same dude unless he's super old, even older than Methuselah. But it's the title. He takes Sarah into his harem, and the Bible doesn't describe what happens. But there's a story where Pharaoh's thinking, great, I'm going to have a nice evening with the lovely lady Sarah. And then as he gets up to go and invite Sarah to his boudoir, an angel smashes him in the face. And he's like, oh, what happened there? Like, he can't see the angel. And every time he goes to Sarah, he gets punched in the face by this angel. And this is what actually wakes up Pharaoh to think, what is going on? To get Abraham, who really is this girl? Because I don't have any teeth left. What's the deal here? I always find these when you're reading some of these midrashim, what you're actually reading is you're reading sermons. You're reading. This was like some rabbi sitting in some synagogue describing these events out on a given Shabbat and really elaborating and coming up with some crazy stuff. And somebody wrote that down. I thought, that's a good one, Rabbi. Yeah. So some of these, if people want to really know what synagogue life was like, then some of the midrashim, you realize that actually they're just sermons. This Torah portion also brings in the incident with Melchizedek, where Abram actually meets Melchizedek after engaging in his international politics in chapter 14. And it seems that encounter is kind of out of place. Okay, the actual words, you could actually take that encounter and just sort of move it anywhere else, and the rest of the passage would actually flow a lot better. Like, for example, in chapter 14, in verse 17, it says that after Abram returned from the defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh. And then all of a sudden, the next verse is the king Melchizedek, king of Shalem, starts talking to him. But you were about to talk to the king of Sodom. Now all of a sudden you're talking to the king of Shalem. And then after talking to Melchizedek, in verse 20, you end up with the king. So Abraham gives a tithe, and then immediately it turns around and says, in verse 21, the king of Sodom said to Abram. So you suddenly switch back to the actual story. So it seems as though if you take out the incident with Melchizedek, verse 17, 18, and 21 will just flow properly. So it looks like the editor, who according to tradition is Joshua, right, sort of put this encounter in perhaps the wrong place. So it doesn't say it doesn't happen, just that it creates the text is slightly ambiguous. But it means that if Shalem is Jerusalem, and if the King of Righteousness is ruling Jerusalem, he is, according to tradition, he's Shem, or he's definitely a Gentile. There is a Gentile who worships the Lord. Okay, is essentially what you're finding. It's just like Noah, right? There are other monotheistic traditions out there, and Abram encounters him, and so it sets up the picture that when the children of Israel invade Canaan and they captured Jerusalem, they don't destroy the inhabitants. Right? David does not butcher the Jebusites. Why? Because there's a potential that they are actually also worshiping God, and you end up with Jerusalem being a city of Jews and Gentiles, which it actually is to this day. But it demonstrates that that's something that God always wanted, right? He always wanted Jews and Gentiles to work together. This story also brings out the problem of Hagar, the Egyptian, and the incident that creates the first son of Abraham. Abram actually has lots of children, and you end up with Ishmael and Isaac. And too many people look at the current conflict of Ishmael and Isaac and bring that forward to today. They go, look, see, Arabs and Jews, they're still fighting together. It's Ishmael and Isaac and their descendants. And but they always forget that most Arabs are actually not descended from Ishmael at all. Okay, Ishmael is actually an Egyptian. Okay, remember Hagar is an Egyptian, so Ishmael is an Egyptian, and Ishmael and Isaac actually reconcile. Right? Jacob and Esau reconcile. The conflict is always time immemorial. The conflict that we're seeing today has a different spiritual side to it. It's anti-Semitism. Okay, it's much deeper than just saying Ishmael and Isaac, and that conflict is still going on. In case you might not notice, lots of rabbis are called Ishmael. Okay, they don't find it as a bad name. Okay, it's only in certain streams of Christian exegesis that we turn to think that Ishmael is this evil person. But they actually reconcile. They both attend their father's funeral, and the Ishmaelites and the people of Isaac actually have trade and economic prosperity, because it's Joseph who's sold to Ishmaelites, who then take him down to Egypt. Why are they going to Egypt? Because they're Egyptians. The relationship between Ishmael and Isaac is a bit more complicated, a bit more nuanced than perhaps what we might be thinking. The portion of scripture that the prophets that is attached to this one is a beautiful passage. It's Isaiah, as you know, 40. That's one of the servant songs. Okay, and where we get the comfort the people of God, and where you have, it actually picks it up in it's the servant song, which describes at the beginning of the text of the chapter. This is a voice of one calling in the wilderness, so the setting up the idea of someone coming, which is in all the Gospels. The portion, the actual Haftarah portion itself, doesn't start until the end of 27, but it's in the context. Keep things in context. The Israel is challenged about complaining, and the question here is rhetorical. Why do you complain, Israel? Right? What have you got to complain about? Don't you know that I've called you to be a light to the nations? That's what Abram is meant to do, and he was supposed to leave his father's house. Now notice that's the command: leave your father's house and leave your land and your people. There's lots of things you have to leave and go to a place, and you'll discover who you are as a person. You'll discover who you are as a nation, and who you'll discover God Himself. Does Abram actually do that? Well, yes, but he waits until Dad dies, right? Which is actually not what he's told to do. So he doesn't start so well. Right? Abraham, we always go, Abraham, the obedient one. Yes, but he was a slow starter. Okay, and Acts chapter 6 and 7 reflect on that when Stephen is giving his defense against the Sanhedrin, and he challenges them and says, you're always being disobedient. The first person he uses as a proof text of disobedience is Abraham. And you go, huh? When did Abraham disobey? Well, right at the start. Okay. Sometimes we think, I heard the voice of the Lord and I leapt to obey. Maybe. Okay. Nice if we all did that. But we don't always, even if our beginnings are poor, our endings can be great. So don't ever give up. That's a nice thing to think about. So, why do you complain, Israel? Why do you complain, Jacob? Well, people have a legitimate. If you've got a concern, then you've really only got one address to be able to complain to, and that's the Lord. And I like the prophet Habakkuk in this regard. Habakkuk, in his small book, he complains to God. Right? Well, there's all this evil everywhere. Why aren't you doing anything? And in several Bibles, they give you the title: Habakkuk's first complaint, Habakkuk's second complaint. Right? He just keeps complaining. But what I like about Habakkuk is he's only got one address to complain to, so he complains to God. But then he turns around and says, "So now I sit down and wait for my rebuke." Right? He complains to the Lord, but he already knows he's wrong. Right? He already knows, look, I just don't see everything. But I've got no other voice. I have to give my voice to my concerns, and you have to be the address that those concerns go to. And that's actually part of the relationship. But notice what the prophet says, or God is speaking as through the prophet. Why do you complain, Israel? My way is hidden. Okay. But God seems to have ignored me, and I don't seem to be able to see what He's doing. There's this two-way relationship that's going, and sometimes we're not given all the information at the start, right? Neither is Abraham, right? Lech Lecha, go, which we say go out. Yes, that's the way you even say it today, Lech Lecha, but it's literally go to you. It's as you're doing part of the journey, as you're engaging in your obedience, as you're walking with the Lord, the mystery is actually being revealed. Okay? You don't get it all at the start. No one gets it all at the start. No baby is born where they're lying in the cot going, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing. Okay, you ask 20-year-olds today, what are you going to do? And then no one has a clue. Right? They're working that out. It's the actual walk. And so what is it how do you comfort somebody if the end, because that's our desire, please tell me how this is going to work out. It's not always an easy place to come to that concept of be still and know that I am God. We all want to know what the end is from the beginning. When is this going to happen? When is it not going to happen? And if I get that little piece of information, then I'll be satisfied. Which actually you won't be, but we feel that we will be. God says through the prophet, "Don't you know? Haven't you heard? I'm the creator of the earth. So that's how big I am. If you need to trust in someone, trust in this one. Okay, I'm everlasting. I don't grow tired. I don't grow weary, right? And my depth of wisdom and understanding, you can't even grasp how strong that I am. Okay, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. And even youths grow tired. So you end up with this idea of like good old Abraham. Actually, he's the first person in the Bible that gets old. Okay, no, in the Bible, no one is called old except Abraham. Okay, Abraham is Abraham Huzaken. Abraham, he got old, and which is a shock for some for Jewish exegetes. They go, really? A, how did that happen? B, did no one get old before? Like they were just all young and then they just dropped dead? And some of them go, yep, that's the way it worked. Well, that probably isn't the way it worked. But the point is, and often as we age, we think, oh, I'm becoming useless. I don't have my strength anymore. And actually, that's often when God starts using us even more than we were when we were young. That's not to say that, as Paul chastises Timothy, don't despise youth, okay? But at the same time, don't despise age and or the wisdom that's gained, or the experience there is, or the fruit that comes from a lifetime of walking with the Lord. Okay, because when we get tired, when we've been doing the journey for some time, we actually can. I guess we might use the words slow down. Here it's described as getting weary. God props us up. He gives strength to those who seem to be failing at the time. And this is both a challenge for individuals, but it's also a challenge for people, groups, and nations. Okay, sometimes the nation itself can slow down. Okay, you can get perhaps a little self-obsessed. You can get a little bit distracted with certain issues, but sometimes it needs an extra bit of energy from God to be able to continue to walk out its calling. And so you get those beautiful phrases like you'll soar like on the wings of eagles, right? There's this idea of there's a strength and power that is actually coming. Now, in chapter 40, it's describing the servant. Okay, the voice of one calling. He's going to speak comfort, and in 41, it gives this idea that there is going to be a person who's going to actually help. Okay, and in verse 2. There's someone who's been stirred up from the east, and he's going to be given righteousness. That's going to be part of his repertoire, part of his armory. Who is this person, and why is the east important? Well, obviously it's a direction, yes, but what the direction is usually negative. Usually enemies come from the east. Adam has to run to the east, but also salvation comes from the east. Enemies also come from the north, but that's also where the light comes from. Okay. And so the east is sort of this direction which is mysterious, because that's where you fled from the garden. Who is this person talking about? Well, this, like as often in using biblical Hebrew language, it's fulfilled multiple times. One of these people is also Cyrus. Okay, he's also from the east. He's also a helper of Israel, in particular at a time like this, and he's also a Gentile. Okay, which is also interesting. Is that the relationship that Jews and Gentiles can be positive on both ways. Jewish people can affect the Gentiles, and the Gentiles can actually affect the Jewish people. But it also can be given a messianic claim, and so Israel's calling is to be a blessing to the Gentiles, but at the same time, they can actually return the favor. And as we've seen in Genesis 12 in the Torah portion, if you bless Abraham, I'll bless you. If you curse, I'll curse you. And so what would possibly be a blessing that perhaps Persia got as a nation, it was never conquered. Isn't that an interesting thing? Okay, is that it may have changed names, it may have changed national religion, etc., etc., but as a nation, it was never subdued by another nation. That's not unique in human history, but it is pretty special. Okay, human history is just a replete of one nation dominating another nation. So the portion goes on to say that this guy who is very, very powerful, who is he? Well, I am the Lord, right? I am the first of them, and I am with the last. I am he. Get the actual, as much as we can also shine it out to be Gentile messianic characters like Cyrus. The prophetic voice would also like to remind us that this is also God. So who is the Redeemer? It's God, right? And many times you get challenged, particularly they'll say, no, Aaron, Jews, there's no passages in the Bible that ever describe the Redeemer actually being the divine. Yet when you have a look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, they use these verses to acknowledge that Messiah is God himself. And so 11Q Melchizedek actually describes the Messiah, who is this Redeemer. He is Melchizedek, and at the end of the scroll, and by the way, Melchizedek is God. Because and where do they get that from? They get it from verses like these, where you talk about who's this helper of Israel, who's going to come, who's going to be the messianic figure. Well, it's going to be God himself. Okay. And yet, who else hears this? Strangely enough, we start talking about islands, right? And you go, well, what islands? Israel's a landlocked country. What could you possibly be talking about? Well, the only reference that these guys would have in terms of their little world at the time would be the Greek islands, okay, and the Turkish islands. There's like Cyprus and Malta and Mediterranean stuff. We're not thinking, of Faroe Islands or the Maldives or the Bahamas or anything like that. Or strangely enough, Finland, which has I think more islands than just about everybody on the planet for some strange reason. Most of their islands are quite tiny, but what they're really talking about here is even Gentiles in the corners of the world, they hear the good news of what God is doing. They hear the power that he's as he's working with his people, which he's always meant to. because you got a calling. Abraham, you're called. You're going to establish a community. I'm going to give you children, and you're going to be blessing the world. The world will hear it. So all those little islands off in the Mediterranean, they'll hear as well. And what will they do? They'll come close. Right? They'll come to me. There is this, that God doesn't want to be ignored by Gentiles. He doesn't want to ignore Gentiles. Sometimes we can get into a situation where we think that Jews and Gentiles should be separate. Sometimes Jews even did that themselves. Okay, right? Remember that in the temple, they split. This is as far as Gentiles can go, right? Where Paul says, we broke down the wall of separation. It's a self-criticism, right? He's self-criticizing himself, going, hey, we were never supposed to do that. We were supposed to be a light to the nations, not hold them off and keep them in a barrier. God's turning around here and says, look, I'm going to do some amazing stuff. And not only that, you guys over there are going to hear from it. And when you hear about it, what are you going to do? You're going to stay on your little islands? No, you're going to come near me, because I actually want to have a relationship with you as well. So they're going to come, they're going to encourage each other, and then you get these descriptions of wealth that happen. That when prophets talk about blessings, obviously they talk about money a fair bit, and which can lead some people to think that it's prosperity gospel, but the Hebrew Bible does give material blessings for as a reward. I think everybody here who has material wealth would all acknowledge that this is a blessing from God, even if you had to work for it. But you would acknowledge that the ultimate source has to have been the divine. The prophets do exactly the same thing. Okay. It's not prosperity gospel. It's simply acknowledging that my prosperity comes from God. Okay, that doesn't mean that poor people get nothing, because in the same prophet, right, Isaiah, who's going to hear the good news? The poor. So there is an acknowledgement that both poverty and wealth are something that comes from the Lord. Okay, Israel here is described as the servant. Okay, and that's true. And this is in verse 8, and this is the link that you get to Lech Lecha. Israel's the servant, Jacob's the chosen. You're the descendants of Abraham, my friend. Right? Abraham, who is called in Lech Lecha to go out and be a blessing, it's going to be done through his servants. I took you from the ends of the earth. Well, now we superimpose the Abrahamic story. Abraham's in Ur, and he comes and he is chosen. The people of Israel have been spread all over the earth. They're going to be gathered back. Okay, I've called you. You're supposed to come and serve me. How do they serve? Okay, do they just come to the temple and engage in sacrifices? No, they're meant to be a light to the nations. The job could be daunting, but they're told not to have fear, and God is going to strengthen them, and he's going to be with them. Verse 11, I think, is interesting. All those who rage against you. Well, the world still does it not? It rages against the Jewish people, and it's irrational, it's illogical. And this is why I think that what's going on in our world today is a reflection of a spiritual reality, which at its core is an ancient enemy, anti-Semitism. It's the enemy who from the beginning doesn't like what God has made. God makes humans, Satan's got to corrupt it. God calls Abraham and says, you be a light to the nations. Satan's got to come and corrupt that light somehow. And we're looking at a world where for a brief moment people felt sorry for Jewish people, but not anymore. And how quickly has the rage of nations turned, and but God's going to defend them. Okay. And I like the verse 12. Though you search for your enemies, you'll not find them. Well, those who wage war against you will be nothing at all. Well, amen to that. Okay, there's a prayer that has popped up all over the city. It's called the Prayer for the Soldiers. Just about every doorway's got like a little prayer, and one of the prayers that you pray is, Lord, when we hunt for our enemies, may they all submit to you, submit to our soldiers. What do I mean by that? They want them all to surrender. Okay, God calls his people here not to have fear. Now, why would they be afraid? They could be afraid for a variety of things. One is if they're in diaspora, where then there could be that sense of persecution, sense of fear, who's actually going to protect us. If they're here in Israel, then they could be afraid of the enemies that are around them. They could be afraid of their sin, that they haven't done their calling, and then God might get angry with them, as he has said in other prophetic portions. Although the Haftarah in Noah said, I'm not angry with you anymore. I'm actually going to give you a blessing. So cast out that fear. And what casts out fear? Love casts out fear. Whose love? Well, that's definitely God. Don't be afraid, because I'm going to help you, says the Lord. And he's the Redeemer, the Goel. He's the one that buys back the people of Israel. And then verse 15, God is going to use his people. I'm going to make you the threshing sled. Now that's a device that is used to separate and grind and doing an agricultural process. Okay, full of here, it's got sharp teeth, and that's what's happening. Israel is the way people relate to what's going on with Hamas and with Israel is actually revealing people's character. It's people are coming up, and you're being able to see people's the inner workings of people, how they think, how they feel, how they actually look at the world. The litmus test is Jerusalem, and the prophet here is reflecting that. If Abraham is going to be a blessing to the nations, then there's going to be a response by the nations. They can either bless or they can curse. And then God's going to respond to that. So God starts the process. I call you, Abraham, and I need you to go and be a blessing to the nations. But in return, they're going to respond to you. It could be positive, it could be negative. And the way they respond to you, suddenly I shall respond to that. And I will bless those who bless you, and I'll curse those who curse you. So there's responses going in multiple directions. Okay, and so Israel becomes the threshing, the piece, the equipment that God is using. Okay, there is the concept of the winnowing fork. Okay, and this sort of tempest that's going to crush the enemies. This is actually picked up by John the Baptist. Okay, when they're in the Gospel of John, they asked John the Baptist, "Who are you?" And are you Elijah? No. Are you the Messiah? No. Are you the prophet? No. I'm absolutely nobody. But trust me, when he comes here, the winnowing fork is in his hand. Right? He's doing this chaff. He's here in this text, it's the people of Israel, but it's also in context of a redeemer figure. And so John the Baptist is using the Redeemer figure idea. Okay. And then the rest of the portion. Oh, actually, it finishes there, but it finishes with the judgment scene, which is picked up by John the Baptist. But later on, the rest of the prophetic portion describes how God brings blessing to both the land and to the people. Those two are always interlinked, land and people. It's so sad in terms of human history that Israel has been out of the land more than they've been in it. Okay, which is kind of sad. And something else we also should remember is that for many Christians, the people who were took the message of Jesus and guarded it have actually been in the land longer than Jewish people. Okay, because remember, Christians were there at the start, the book of Acts, and they never left. So there are some very, very old Christian communities in the Holy Land, and so that often creates the tension that we see in some of our politics today that I'll have to speak into in the next couple of days whenever that interview occurs. All right, guys, those are the two portions, Noah and Lech Lecha. God, there's so much there where God uses water, which becomes very symbolic for us today, and the idea of going on a journey, and the way as you are a blessing to other people, you're also discovering something about yourself. Okay. And how God uses that as individuals, but also as the nation of Israel. A couple of thoughts?
Yeah, I just had a question about what you were talking about. The ancient enemy is anti-Semitism. Now I know we've also talked about the spirit of Amalek. Would you say is that the same spirit, just has a name to it?
Yes, this has a name to it. They in Israel today, the word Amalek is used in conversation on a daily basis. You know, is we're fighting Amalek again. He has raised his head, and because every generation is an Amalek. About 15 years ago, it was Ahmadinejad. Okay, they said, that guy's Amalek. He's trying to wipe out the Jewish people. Well, he's disappeared. No one talks about him anymore. Okay, and Israel, whom he wanted to wipe out, is still here. And Hamas have tried they attacked Israel. Did they actually think that they could actually win? But they've certainly poked the bear, and Israel has really risen to the occasion. We'll see how far they will go in their war against Hamas. I know that as more details come about on that first day of October the 7th, Simchat Torah, then it's true that 1,400 Israelis were butchered, absolutely. But they didn't go down fighting. They did go down fighting. Okay, they didn't. They killed over 1,500 terrorists that day. Right. So there are stories where people were butchered, and they ran. But there's also stories where people were incredibly brave and didn't give up. And so as more and more of those stories come to pass, people are realizing that there were some incredible acts of bravery by people who fought the terrorists literally with their bare hands. Okay, fighting people with machine guns and grenades and things, and they to defend themselves and defend their loved ones. So a lot of stories will come about. Books will be written about this, should the Lord tarry, and all kinds of interesting things will come about. But it's definitely the spirit of Amalek. And what did Amalek do? He preyed on the weak, right? He came from behind and he was attacking the women and the children. And you know, because when he actually came up against soldiers, he lost. Okay. And so he's not, they're strong, but they're not that strong.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to just comment, Aaron, when we were talking out of Isaiah 54, I think it was, and you said it took time for the world to reach its zenith of sin, and this is when, you know, God had sort of regretted, you know, creating it, and just even what's going on today in Israel. I mean. Many nations think that what Israel is doing to Gaza is a result of this one incident that happened on October 7th. But actually, when we look back on it, it's like a zenith came finally. And so we even here, when we gather, we don't pray for the peace of Jerusalem right now. We actually pray for this evil, you know, structure to come down, and that's not going to be peace. That's not going to be peaceful.
No,
because,
but that's a great prayer. Thanks, Gab. Thank you for praying that way, Gavin, because people here,
yeah,
you a lot of the Christian churches in the Middle East and around the world are saying we pray for peace, and that's really hard to tell Jewish people who are burying their loved ones. You know, let's all have peace. Because that's the Christian thing to do. You should turn the other cheek, you know, and so superimpose Christian morality on a secular state. God says in Exodus 13, I'm having war with Amalek, right? You know, and I think you're praying the right way. That strong tower of Hamas, that bastion of deceit and lies, that instrument of the enemy, needs to be defeated. Yeah, may it submit to our soldiers.
So, Aaron, is there a particular scripture that really outstands that you could say, give for an example to people that ask, like, how can I pray for Israel? Because I also feel the same, like, you know, you start praying for peace and it seems like it's just empty. It doesn't feel like that's really where we're being helpful, but people will ask.
They do, and they should. How should I pray? Great question. Let's remember that during World War II, people were praying for peace, but that doesn't mean we wanted to sit down and have negotiations with Hitler, right? So one of the problems is we think that peace is an absence of war, right? Sometimes it's actually the you have to be very careful when you say it, because it can definitely come out wrong. Sometimes evil is fought with violence. Sometimes you pray and evil surrenders and joins your team, and mercy and hearts are changed, and all that's true. The Hamas people can become believers in Jesus. Okay, does not the son of Hamas, is he not being very vocal? And right, yes, it's true. It's fantastic. But also know, even in Revelation, how does God deal with sin and wickedness in Revelation? The same way he dealt with sin and wickedness in Noah's days. Sometimes evil is confronted violently. Now that we use those words and then we shy away from it. Oh, it's a horrible thing to say. Well, and so I like the way Psalm 144 is used. It's currently sitting on my tag on WhatsApp, and probably will sit there until this war is over. in the Psalm 144, it says, "You, the Lord, you train my hands for battle and my arms for war." But the very next sentence, it says, "But you're my loving kindness, you're my strong tower, you're my shield, and you're my refuge and my defense. You're full of mercy." So it gives you both. It gives you both this idea that I have to go and fight. Abraham had to go and fight. Right? He fought these 5 kings to go rescue hostages. How interesting that is. Okay. He managed to get all his back, so may we have the same success. So we have this incident where we might have to fight, and if we do, then may the Lord be training us for war. But at the same time, we acknowledge that He is actually rest and comfort. He is defense. He is love. So and mercy, and so they run in parallel. So easy for us to oscillate into one camp, but the Hebrew Bible keeps both things in tension, and not always easy to do. But so I would pray. I'd that a lot of people have been praying Psalms, and I think that's a great thing to do. Is when we don't know what to pray, use the very words of God Himself. He has given us a prayer book, and say, you don't always know how to pray this way, okay? Because I've got it all covered. So Psalm 144 is a nice one. So in terms of Lech Lecha, has anybody ever thought of the meaning of those words before? Go to you. The idea of actually, while you're on the journey, you're learning about yourself. You're actually discovering who you really are as a person and the way you are relating to God and His Spirit.
That's so very true. And sometimes as believers, we are too timid to step out into something that we don't know. But once we do get the courage up to do it, we're like, wow, I really learned a lot there, and you are stepping into your destiny, or, what God has for you. So yeah, that's just a great word. I like that. Go to you.
Go to you. Yep. So my little circle of rabbi friends, they take that, they really appreciate some that expression of Abraham in you is in by doing your learning. And they take that to every aspect of their life. They go, sometimes I don't understand why I do certain mitzvahs. I just don't understand. Okay, so it's against my nature. I don't really want to do it. But as I'm doing it, Aaron, I'd learn just a little taste of why God asked us to do this. Whether it was just a good feeling that he got, where he goes, something about it made me feel good. I can't put my finger on it right now, but I'm getting there. I find that also in my own journey, and I'm really glad that Abraham was doing a lot of this when he got older. Okay, because I ain't getting any younger, but I still seem to have to do a heck of a lot more, but that's okay. So, he gives us the strength.
I just had one more question, if nobody else has a question. I'm trying to leave it open. So getting back to Isaiah 41 verse 4.
Okay.
Where you were talking about whose work is this, who has brought it about, how God is actually saying He is the Redeemer. Did you also say that became the understanding that then God Himself will be the Messiah?
Correct.
Did I hear you say that?
Okay. That is correct. So you, in context, okay, Isaiah 40, go all the way back to the beginning of the chapter, even though the Haftorah doesn't start there. It's in context. It's the suffering servant. It's the voice of one calling in the wilderness is this sort of redeemer figure. Then there's this confusion bit, and God's going to bring out this redeemer figure from the east. Okay, it's a very, very interesting place. Okay, east of Eden, and all those kinds of concepts. But and then you get that cryptic verse, I the Lord, I'm doing this. And so the Qumran community, which were priests in the temple that moved to the wilderness. Why? Because Isaiah 40 told them to, right? In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. So they went out into the desert to prepare the way of the Lord. They also, in the same grouping, because there's no chapters, right? And no chapters and verses, so you should kind of read the whole thing. They realized, wow, God's actually going to do the redeeming. And so they came to the conclusion that the Redeemer was God himself. How did they understand that as the way we do? Probably not, because they were looking forward. We've got the opportunity to look back. But they had in the Bible, they had all the ambiguity that's already there. How is God entering into his creation? And when he does, what is he bound by? How is he seeing? And how is he not knowing? How is he regretting? How is he learning? God says, now I know. Like in the Tower of Babel thing, it says God came down to see what man was doing. He couldn't do it in heaven, right? Like what? He's got to actually physically leave heaven to actually pay attention to what's going on earth. No wonder the earth's a mess, right? But you get this ambiguity in the text, and I think that helped the Qumran community come to the conclusion, rightly so, that God is the Redeemer. God is the Redeemer. In fact, he says it so often in the Haftarah passage. I am the Redeemer. I'm going to be your Goel. I'm that Redeemer figure.
So does the rest of the Jewish community who read the Torah, do they believe that same thing, that God will be the Messiah?
The Redeemer? So so in modern Judaism, let's have modern Judaism today, which is rabbinic, okay, has streams. The majority stream are doing their best to downplay messianism, okay, because they consider it to be quite dangerous. Every time we get messianic, we end up getting slaughtered, so we'll better stop that one for a start. They often interpret verses in the opposite to the way Christians do, okay, and Christians do the same. Christians are like, oh, Jews are interpreting that verse that way. Well, we won't do that. We'll do, Protestants will never look at a Bible verse the same way Catholics do. Why not? Because they're Catholics. Okay, as opposed to saying, just let the text speak, for crying out loud, right? And vice versa. But there are elements, and it's in some of their midrashim. One of my favorites, which I think we discussed when we were doing the Torah portion of Deuteronomy, where it says Moses, the man of God. And it says Moshe ish Elohim, right? Literally Moses, the man God, right? And then you had a midrash that said, when is Moses God and when is Moses a man? Right? And so there are little stories, even in rabbinic circles, for thousands of years, where they've contemplated it, touched it, and then bounced back. Okay, that's the thing where it's like, Lord, just lift the veil, will you? Right? They touch it and bounce back. They touch it, bounce back. So it's there, and some have found it. The majority are still just touching.
So this would be a verse then that we could share about Yeshua being
yes.
the
You
Messiah.
start verse Isaiah 41 to 1 to 4, right? Is you say, who's this Redeemer? Who's this guy coming? And then you go, look at the conclusion. Look at the way God turns around and says, well, it's me, right? Okay.
Can I just ask a question
You're
about,
muted.
oh, no, I'm not.
No,
muted.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. All right. Just my angle.
The reference in Isaiah 63, who is this that is coming up from Edom? Is Edom in the east as well?
It is. It is. Edom's in the east. This Isaiah has he plays with the north and the east. He pretty much leaves the west alone. I mean, a little bit. It's got the islands and things like that. There's not a lot there, and he's really disappointed with the south, which is Egypt. So he doesn't talk about that very much either. But north and east are his geographical hotspots. And yes, Isaiah 63, who comes from the east, and does the guy come back peaceful? No, it's violent. Yes, it's where the prophet says, why are your garments stained red like you've been, making wine and crushing grapes? And then the powerful figure says, I'm crushing humans, and I'm splattering their blood all over myself. And you go, oh my gosh, that's very violent. But it's the anger of the Lord flooded a world, right? And so, but it gets to a point. There's this. He's long suffering. The prophets constantly tell us how his mercy endures so long, but there gets to a point where he says, "Okay, that's it." So,
How is that figure seen in Judaism by the rabbis? Is that a messianic figure, or is it
who is
the figure that we get in Isaiah 63?
Do you know? I've actually not seen a very good comment on this. It's not the people say the forbidden passage, but there are some passages where their commentary really tails off because they're unsure as to what this means. So just remember that for in Judaism, the mainstream view is Messiah is a human. Okay, so messianic character like Moses and Abraham and Cyrus, I think they were violent. They fought, right? They engaged in international politics and war and nations and things, but they were all humans and they all died. Whereas the prophet gives us these hints that actually a little bit more than just a man. It's actually God himself doing all this. Now, how shall we respond? So
I just have another question. I don't know if it's the right time to ask it, but our sense, I think rightly so, is that we're in some birth pangs right now. Do the Orthodox people see that in a sense of there's going to have to be these, before Messiah will come, there's going to have to be some birth pangs in that?
Yeah, Gog Magog is usually what happens. So every now and again you'll get these the discussions where people gather and they go, so are we coming up to Gog and Magog? And the last time they did this was in 2016. They had signs around the city, discussion, is it Gog Magog? And the conclusion was no. So have a big rabbinical debate, and they go, no. So, but it happens. It does happen. Usually, obviously, when things like this happen, everybody leaps. Not everybody. A lot of people will leap to prophetic portions and try and figure out where we are on the timeline.
I was just asking that because about a week ago I spoke with an Orthodox woman who lives in the north of Israel, and her comment was, well, we believe something good will come out of this. And I didn't get a chance to ask her because she had to leave the call, but she lives in a community.
Okay.
She lives near Sfat, and we were walking around the property of where she was living and the school they were working with at one point. And she said, well, when Messiah comes, he's going to drop down here first before he goes to Jerusalem.
Yes, they really do think that. Yes, they even have a little alleyway. Have you been there to see it? Okay, it's really tiny, called Messiah's Alley, and he's supposed to walk up that. And there was a guy who had a little chair, and he just sat at the end of the alley for his entire life, waited.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, you know, is there a sense too that Messiah, sort of the converse of the Islamic people, that the Messiah will come in a time of chaos or a time of great difficulty? And is that the Gog and Magog, or?
So one of your first comments, and it's true because you actually see it in the prophets, good comes out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually true. So good came out of the flood. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good comes out of Abraham. Even Revelation, you know, all the destruction of all the bowls, and good comes out of it. There's the prophets here. I'm not going to be angry with you forever. I'm not going to keep you impoverished. I'm going to bring redemption. I'm going to allow the earth to flourish again. So that's always there. But often the good has to come from a chaotic environment. And maybe that's the reason why in creation you get the story. It was tohu vavohu. You know, we've got to go through our chaos and void to get to the beautiful creation at the end, perhaps. But the Redeemer figure does seem to come from a violent. One stream seems to come from a violent, like Isaiah 63 and things like that. Hence the reason why at the time of Jesus, when they were looking back and seeing what the Maccabees had done, where they violently overthrew the Greeks and created their socialist utopia or whatever they did, so some of the disciples of Jesus were like, let's go kill some Romans, right? You know, let's bring on the redemption by doing the violent thing. Let me call fire down on these terrible Samaritans. You know, we'll start Armageddon. There was, and John the Baptist was there, right? You know, when in John chapter 1, he's like, the Messiah's coming. He's going to start hacking and slashing. He's going to take the axe to the tree. These winnowing fork is in his hand. He's going to burn all the bad chaff. You know, all of the things that Isaiah and the other prophets had talked about. John the Baptist is saying, like, that's what we're going to do. Jesus shows up and he says, no, we're doing the good news to the poor bit. Anyone okay with that? You know, so there's all those images are there. But for Jewish people, so for those that would like to talk about the Messiah in this time, and it's not everybody, they understand that it comes from a violent, a place of chaos.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Brad, great to see you, mate.
But how about we just close in prayer and then
Okay.
we'll turn it off.
Yeah. Who would like to
Okay,
finish us off in prayer?
Yeah. Oh, Melody has voted me, I guess. So I'll do it. Heavenly Father, oh Lord, we lift up the situation today in Jerusalem, in Israel. Lord, I even pray over Christchurch, Lord, all these ones who come in, break down language barriers, all that kind, Lord, that, Lord, we truly desire that they would come to know the Lord, the Prince of Peace, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings. And so, Lord, thank you for the staff there. Thank you for volunteers that are placed and situated right there, Lord, to bring your word, to bring your truth. And even Aaron, as you go on this radio call, coming in a rebuttal kind of way, Lord, we do ask, Lord, that you would break down the sorcery of the media out there. Lord, there's our friend Terry prayed a prayer the other day, like if they're telling lies, Lord, break their teeth, in just a kind way, Lord. And but honestly, that truth would prevail. And we just bless you, Aaron, as you go on this call to bring the truth in Jesus' mighty name. And we pray for Micah today, Lord, and his unit, and all those ones, all those young men and women at the border. Lord, would you strengthen them? We press in, Lord, the blessing of Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Be brave, and know that you are not alone. That the Lord is with you, and many nations, just like this call, we pray for you, and we support, and we stand with Israel in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.